Hi, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Kit.
Welcome to Starry Time, where stars plus lines.
Equal stories.
On this month's podcast, we are going to be visiting Scorpius, the scorpion of the night sky.
Scorpius is the southernmost constellation in the zodiac, even though it lies across the celestial equator along with all the other zodiac constellations.
Scorpius as a constellation predates our good friend Ptolemy and the ancient Greeks, though he of course did include it in his great 48 constellations in the Almagest.
As we mentioned last month, the ancient Greeks and others in the ancient world included Libra in this constellation of Scorpius, where the scales were often called the claws of the scorpion.
So in the ancient past, this constellation would have been really large. But based on the current IAU constellation boundaries, it comes in at 497 square degrees, ranking 33rd overall, and among the zodiac constellations, it is actually the third smallest, as it is only larger than the golden flying ram Aries and our favorite sea goat dad Capricornus.
Right, and this same constellation is also known as Maui's Hook, the Brooded Swan, and even the Leaning Coconut Tree in other traditions and cultures.
So it seems like this constellation can look like many things. What were your first impressions of Scorpius, Kit?
Well, in the IAU drawing, it kind of did remind me of a fish hook with like a handle at the top of it, or maybe like a clothes hanger. So I definitely saw that like Maui's Hook much more than I saw Scorpion. I also saw some other depictions that looked like a dandelion being blown over, but I couldn't really get to Scorpion. How about you?
Yeah, when I looked at it, it looked like these like microscopic pictures of like little hydra creatures that have all sorts of little fanned heads and then like long tails. Also kind of just looks like an anchor to me, like a really fancy anchor or a hook. It also did sort of vaguely look like a creature to me, like maybe a two-legged snake more than a scorpion, but I could see something that sort of reminded me of a stick figure of an animal, though scorpion might not have been my first guess.
It definitely has some unique shapes relative to other constellations and polygons that we've seen, but I'm not sure if these particular descriptions are going to help. So there are some other ways you can find it.
Sure, it can be found between Libra and Sagittarius, and if you're someplace very dark, you can see Scorpius' tail near the center of the Milky Way galaxy.
Which is, of course, our home galaxy.
It's visible between 40 degrees and negative 90 degrees latitude, which means it's most visible in the southern hemisphere of the sky. So now we know where and when to find Scorpius. We have a vague understanding of what it looks like. Let's talk about some of the stars that comprise this constellation.
So the constellation itself is comprised of 18 main stars, but to change things up a little bit, I think we're not going to go through all three of the brightest stars, and instead, I think we're going to talk about only the one brightest star and try out a new segment that we're calling Bayer's Variable Star. But let's get started with the brightest star in Scorpius. What is it? Tell us about it.
Sure, Kit. The brightest star in Scorpius is, drumroll please, Alpha Scorpii.
Bayer, it's a New Year's miracle. Good job, Bayer.
Well, we shouldn't be too impressed because Alpha Scorpii is also known as Antares, and it's the 16th brightest star in the entire night sky. So,
Low-hanging fruit there.
gotta win the easy ones, Bear. But yes, Antares is the IAU designated name, which means anti-Mars or rival of Mars. But it's sometimes also called the heart of the Scorpion. The system itself is actually a double system that's assumed to be a binary. The system has a variable apparent magnitude of 0.6 to 1.6, and the system is between 550 and 604 light years from the solar system, depending on the source you're actually looking at. It's comprised of an extremely large red giant star that is 700 times the diameter of the Sun, as well as a main blue-white sequence star. Antares is also represented on the flag of Brazil.
Given the brightness of Antares and its reddish hue, it's probably not a surprise that the ancient Egyptian, Chinese, and Babylonian astronomies mentioned this specific star. And I'd also point out that this star is actually larger than perhaps the more famous red giant of the night sky, which is the star Betelgeuse, which is located in the constellation Orion.
Spoilers! We'll get to you soon enough, Orion.
And maybe a little bit today. Before we get to our news segment, though, I want to just give a quick shout out to Lambda Scorpii, or Shaula, from an Arabic phrase meaning raised tail, because it's the second brightest star in Scorpius.
Well, you ruined Bayer's streak of going 1 for 1.
I had to be done because this star is actually the 23rd brightest star in the sky, so I just wanted to give a little love there.
Deserved a shout out. But okay, let's get to our new segment, Bayer's variable star. The premise of this segment is we're going to work our way through the Bayer-designated stars in the constellation each month. So this month, we'll start with Beta, and then next month, we'll talk about Gamma.
Yeah, so the basic idea is that we will talk about the brightest star and then also kind of work our way through some of Bayer's designated stars, which may or may not be very bright, as the case may be. Before we get into discussing Beta Scorpii, though, I want to just make a note that the title of the segment is kind of misleading because variable stars, which actually include stars like Antares or Alpha Scorpii, are basically ones that have changing apparent magnitude over time. And sometimes this is due to changes in the star itself or due to changes in our view from Earth. But these variable stars, as they're called, weren't identified in modern astronomy until 1638, and they are credited to Johannes Holwarda, who was a Frisian astronomer and also physician and philosopher, as you did in the 1600s.
No internet, no TV, lots of free time, philosopher, physician, popular job description.
Totally.
So basically what Kit's saying is that contemporary astronomers identified variable stars after Bayer's star catalog. Uranometria was published in 1603, so just enjoy the astronomy pun. And don't add us, okay?
Although speaking of history and the history of variable stars, we should just give a shout out to Henrietta Swan Leavitt, who identified some 2,400 variable stars from photographic plates between 1907 and her death in 1921.
Wow, 2,400 variable stars. Mm-hmm. We definitely need to add her to the asterisms list for a future deep dive.
Absolutely. But onwards to Beta Scorpii. So let's just start with the caveat here that the Wikipedia on this star has a straight up hierarchy diagram of orbits in the system.
Very complicated.
So complicated. So if I get this wrong, let me know. I'd be happy to see a graphic demonstration of this at any point in time. That would be great. But as far as I can tell, there are two interrelated systems called Beta 1 Scorpii and Beta 2 Scorpii, which together have a combined apparent magnitude of 2.5. So Beta 1 Scorpii and Beta 2 Scorpii are two systems that orbit another, but each of the two systems are comprised of 3 stars. So 6 stars total. And then there's also a 7th star called Beta Scorpii D, which seems like one of those close but not part of the orbit situations. And then to add even more complexity, some people have theorized that the two systems, each of 3 stars, also have an additional star that we haven't seen yet or haven't seen evidence of yet.
So we're talking about a minimum here of 7 stars and possibly, perhaps even 9 stars?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Very wild. The system is about 470 light years away. It's estimated to be about 6 million years old. And the largest parts of the system are much more massive than the sun at 10 and 15 solar masses.
Large and in charge. That's my summary of this system. I don't know. It seems like it would be a pretty big competitor for Gold Star of the Month, Kit.
Oh, don't you worry. I got something exciting planned.
Oh, I'm excited. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back to learn about Kit's Gold Star of the Month. Welcome back. This segment is called Gold Star. In this segment, we alternate picking the star or space object in our constellation of the month that captures our mind, our heart, and our soul. This month, Kit, you're up. So what was your choice?
So even though Scorpius is a relatively small constellation among the other zodiac constellations, as you mentioned at the top of the show, there are still some pretty cool space objects to choose from. So for example, there's Messier 80, which is one of the first discoveries of Charles Messier. There is the oft photographed Butterfly Nebula.
Beautiful.
There's also a recurrent nova system called U Scorpii, which we've observed sort of getting brighter and then subsiding
Whoa.
8 times. Most recently in June 2022, and for the first time in 1863, making it one of only 10 recurrent nova systems in the Milky Way that we found so far. But none of these won my gold star.
You got a lot of interesting options here. So what did you wind up choosing, if not one of them?
Great question. So I ended up going with PSR B1620-26b.
As usual, a very catchy name.
Very. It is an exoplanet that has the informal nickname Methuselah.
Luckily, that is much more memorable. But wait, I seem to remember, isn't Methuselah in Libra?
So this is a good question. So there is a star called Methuselah in Libra, located in the constellation Libra, which is actually HD 140283.
As we all know.
But this, as we all remember and can definitely memorize, but this exoplanet has the same unofficial nickname.
All right, so what's so special about this exoplanet? I assume it must have to do with its age, right? Given its connection to the biblical figure?
Exactly. So Methuselah is the exoplanet, not the star, is estimated to be 12,400 light years from Earth, and the planet is estimated to be 12.7 billion years old.
That's almost as old as the universe, which is, what, 13.7 billion years old? Wow, so it must have formed really early on in the universe's history.
Yes, so it's extremely old, and there's some other interesting things about this exoplanet. The first is that it's located in a circumbinary orbit.
Circumbinary, which means it orbits 2 stars?
Yeah, so usually what's happening in these systems is that there's 2 stars in a binary system. So the 2 stars are orbiting each other, and the planet orbits them both at a further distance away. And this is obviously in contrast to a planet like Earth that orbits a single star. But it's also possible for there to be binary star systems where a planet orbits only one of the stars. So in this case, what's happening is there's 2 stars in an orbit together, and Methuselah orbits around both of them on the outer perimeter. And this is the good part. The 2 stars that it's orbiting?
Yeah.
A pulsar and a white dwarf.
Whoa, so that kind of makes Methuselah like one of these zombie planets from your gold star in Virgo.
Yeah, so just a quick reminder, right, that a pulsar is a neutron star and a white dwarf is a collapsed star. So basically these are like dead/dying stars /deadish
So it probably
stars.
means Methuselah wasn't part of this system originally.
Exactly, because it would have been sort of blown away during one of these events, either the collapse for a white dwarf or the pulsar. So the current thinking is that the planet formed around the white dwarf after it had become a white dwarf, and then the system was caught by the neutron star, the
Wow,
pulsar.
Methuselah, what a journey you've been on. Welcome to the Gold Star of the Month Club to perhaps our oldest member, exoplanet PSR B1620-26b, our guy, Methuselah.
Welcome back. So we've talked astronomy with our segments Cosmic Background, Brightest Star, Bayer's Variable Star, and Gold Star. So let's get to the myths of Scorpius. What do you remember about this myth,
Yeah,
Jordan?
this one I was really blank on. I mean, I remembered, of course, it's a big scorpion, but I couldn't remember who it was connected to or what part of a larger narrative it had. All I remembered was it's a scorpion. How about you, Kit?
Yeah, so based on our discussion of the crab and Cancer, episode 7, if everyone wants to listen, I kind of assumed that this was another like Hera fighting Dirty versus Hercules thing.
Well, analysis turns out wasn't super far off, because in the Greco-Roman mythology, Scorpius is placed into the night sky after felling a hero. But this time it's just not Hercules.
New hero alert?
alert! So, in this Greco-Roman myth, Scorpius is the scorpion who kills the hunter, Orion. Since Orion has his own constellation, we'll explore his business another time. But suffice to say, he's a hero much like all the other ancient heroes. Probably not actually that great of a dude, but venerated nevertheless.
Yeah, I mean, just remember Pollux and Castor, our dude bros in Gemini who stole their cousins' wives, or Achilles, who not only kills but just like desecrates Hector's body in the Iliad. So some of these heroes are
Leave a little bit to be
questionable.
desired. So keep that in mind as we keep going.
Yeah.
So there are a few differing versions on how the Scorpion and Orion came to be connected. First, in Hesiod's work, The Astronomy, he tells us that Orion, who was friends / more than friends / not at all friends with the goddess Artemis, is out hunting with Artemis and her mother Leto, and states that he will kill all of the creatures of the world. Gaia, the goddess of earth and a primordial being, overhears this and doesn't take too kindly to this blatant display of hubris and this threat, and she sends a giant scorpion to kill Orion. Artemis and Leto then ask Zeus to put Orion and the scorpion in the stars, in memorial or as a reminder of the perils of excessive pride.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting to note that the Scorpion was located on the opposite side of Orion, so the enemies don't share the night sky together, but they're constantly sort of chasing one
And
another.
there are a few different versions of this myth. There's also a version where Artemis and Leto are the ones that send the scorpion to kill him for his boast. In another version of the myth, Orion tries to force himself on Artemis, and she sends the scorpion to kill him. In another version, Apollo, who is Artemis's twin, sends the scorpion to kill Orion because of his relationship with Artemis. So basically, long and short of it, God sends Scorpion to kill Orion for being just a jerk.
I also looked into the Babylonian mythology related to the constellation Scorpius, and it kind of reminded me of Beta Scorpii.
So, 6 to 9 parts?
3, but yes. So basically, in ancient Babylonian lore, the constellation was 3 distinct parts, all of the scorpion. The first was the claws, which became Libra, which we talked about last month. There was the breast of the scorpion, and then the stinger of the scorpion. And each of these things were associated with different deities. So the breast of the scorpion was associated with the goddess Lysi, who is a mother goddess, or maybe a goddess of lamentation. And then the stinger was associated with the god Ninurta, who was a god of farming, healing, hunting, and war. And the entire constellation together was associated with the goddess Ishara, who seems to be a love goddess of some kind. So all these different associations, but I wasn't actually really able to find too much about the specific myths of these gods and the scorpion together.
One of those things that's been shrouded to history. We know these associations exist, but perhaps not the full story. I think it's also worth mentioning the Hawaiian myth related to the constellation Scorpius, which is known instead as the fishhook of Maui. Maui was a demigod in Hawaiian mythology who famously used his fishhook to pull up the islands of Hawaii.
Awesome. So we've got several iterations of the Orion and Scorpion myth. We have some insights into Babylonian astronomy and mythology, and then, of course, the interpretation from Hawaiian mythology. So let's talk about the themes from these myths before visiting Creature Corner.
Perfect. So in the version where Orion is killed by Gaia, it seems to me the biggest takeaway is maybe don't threaten to kill all living creatures.
Yeah, right? Like, respect nature or it will destroy you, since Gaia is, like, essentially the personification
And of course,
Earth.
that relates to the dangers of being prideful. As usual, this myth can also have a more simple function, just as a warning about the deadliness of scorpions, a cautionary tale. Basically a way to pass down information about animals that might harm you.
Definitely. I also like the arc that plays out in the versions of the myth where Orion's being killed for trying to force himself on Artemis. But I also find them a little disappointing that he's not punished earlier, because there are myths in which he's also sort of like sexually assaulting mortal women. Yeah, and it's like Artemis gets protected in part because she's a goddess, but he's also behaving this way towards mortal women with like no consequences.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of information about the scorpion itself from the Babylonian lore, so I don't know that we can really delve into that set of myths without more information.
Yeah.
But the Maui myth is definitely a creation myth, well in that cosmology genre, popular use of myth to explain the natural world and how we got here.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a pretty fairly straightforward analysis here. But none of these myths really had all that much to do with scorpions. Obviously, Maui's hook wouldn't, but I think we should rectify that and just center the scorpion with a quick detour to Creature Corner. So, in Creature Corner, we learn fun facts about the real life animal behind the constellation, and I usually leave this up to Jordan. So, what have you got for us about scorpions, Jordan?
Scorpions are fascinating. Let's start with some of the basics, which is that they are arthropods and arachnids, but they're separate from spiders by their presence of a metasoma, which is their tail. And at the end of their tail is their venomous stinger, which is known as a telson, which is used for defense and prey incapacitation. They're also capable of regenerating lost or damaged appendages, a process known as epimorphic regeneration, as in they can activate their stem cells to regrow limbs or their tail. They also exhibit a wide range of ecological adaptations, including xerophily, which is a new word I learned, which just means tolerance of dry environments. They're also
I don't
nocturnal,
have that.
and they thermoregulate via behavioral and physiological means. Let's talk a little bit about the venom. It's composed of a diverse array of compounds, including we got neurotoxins, we got cardiotoxins, we got cytotoxins.
Oh.
And of course, these target physiological systems in the prey. Last, let's talk about the largest scorpion that ever lived, which would be Scorpius, which lived approximately 360 million years ago. Its remains have been found in Scotland, contains one named species so far, with the individual having an estimated length exceeding 28 inches. So that's about 2.5 foot long scorpion. And some of the ones we have today don't get above an inch or two. So just imagine multiplying that size times 25, and you'll have where the Earth was approximately 360 million years ago when scorpions ruled the Earth.
Oh my god, I don't like that. Yeah, giant scorpion, no thank you. And you know what? Small scorpions, also no thank you. Those toxins sound very scary. This is such a ominous and deadly, powerful creature, and it seems like the myths could have made so much better use of the scorpion itself, rather than just as like a vehicle of death. They sound so interesting.
Don't worry, Kit. When we get back for Rec Constellation, I'm gonna be bringing that scorpion center stage.
Welcome back to our segment, Rec Constellation. In this segment, we reimagine, reboot, and revise the myths of our monthly constellation in the hopes of modernizing, subverting, or deepening the story of our monthly constellation. Or sometimes we just try to make them less cringy. So you gave us a little bit of a teaser before the break. So I want to know all about how the scorpion is taking center stage in your Rec Constellation.
In my Rec Constellation, the story goes, Zeus, of course, is known for his jealousy and cruelty. And he often punishes those who defy him. And one day, the giant scorpions, which were much larger and more venomous than the ones we know today, learned of Zeus's secret plans to punish a group of humans who had dared to speak out against him. How do they learn? Maybe Gaia tells them. Maybe Artemis tells them. Determined to protect their fellow mortals, the giant scorpions bravely stand up to Zeus and fight to defend the humans who are protesting his reign. Despite their valiant efforts, however, the scorpions were no match for Zeus's divine powers, and he struck them down with his lightning bolts. But the scorpions' bravery did not go unnoticed, and the humans they had protected vowed to honor their memory. They gathered the bodies of the fallen scorpions and petitioned the Olympic gods to have them placed in the sky, where they become scorpions, frozen forever in heavens, as a reminder of their selfless sacrifice. From that day on, the people of ancient Greece told the story of Scorpio and the giant scorpions to their children, celebrating the bravery and heroism of these noble creatures that came to man's need, and warning them of the danger of Zeus's wrath.
I love it. Scorpion protectors. I love the idea of the natural world like rising up against
We
Zeus.
mortals
The
unite.
the story and the story being about the dangers of Zeus's temper. And honestly, it seems completely in character for Zeus to kill the scorpion on one hand and then on the next day to put it in the sky because he is nothing if not very fickle and
I mean, you
temperamental.
get Zeus. What was
Yeah.
your wreck constellation of the Scorpio myth, Kit?
Well, I kept it really simple. I liked your retcon of just like leaving out
Whatever.
Orion altogether. But in mine, but in mine, I decided to retcon the version of the myth where Orion is killed for trying to assault Artemis. Since Gaia killing him via Scorpion for threatening to kill all the animals on Earth just seems very legit
Totally
to me.
legit. No notes.
Yep, no problem with that one. So, in my Rhett constellation, the virgin goddesses, who are generally Athena, Artemis, Hestia, I'm going to throw Astraea in before she fled the human world to live in the stars with her scales, and all the other sort of maiden goddesses out there, they decide to have a pact where they'll send a scorpion to kill anyone who makes unwanted sexual advances on another person. So what happens is basically, scorpions are everywhere. These are little scorpions, they're all about. And so when they notice this behavior happening, the scorpion will appear. And if the person doesn't stop, the scorpion will strike them dead. So they sort of get a little bit of a warning, but it's kind of like with a mountain lion. Like when you see it, things are bad. Like you probably are not going
Almost to it.
It's you're on death's door. So in this case, Orion would have been killed much earlier in his life before he even threatens to kill all the animals. And so the collection of goddesses decide to put Orion and the scorpion in the sky just to remind the world of the deadly consequences of that kind of
I mean, can we make this happen in real life, though? Great retcon. Love it. Love that we both took it in very different directions from the original myth.
Yeah, and if anybody has any Scorpius retcons they want to share, feel free to send them our way. We love to read them, so send them our way
Always
if you
love
have
reading
them.
your wreck constellations. Time to wrap things up by getting a little less serious and a lot sillier in our final segment, Pop Culture Superstars. In this segment, we share our favorite and least favorite occurrences of this month's constellation in pop culture, and then we wish upon a star for what we think should exist.
Great. So do you want to start us off with your favorite?
Yes. So my choice is the Scorpion Ball, which was unfortunately a semi-astrology, but more horoscope zodiac themed 40th birthday celebration for Grace Kelly. What made this party so exciting, or it captivated my interest, was her commitment to the bit. First of all, only Scorpios were allowed to attend. Or you had to be the spouse of a Scorpio. As well as making sure that only Scorpions themselves could come, she also mandated a dress code of red and black, the color palette most associated with the Scorpio sign. And in the party, the walls of the hotel that the party was held at were also portraits of famous Scorpios, including Edgar Allan Poe and Marie Antoinette, and was topped off with a giant fuchsia cake that weighed 166 pounds, decorated with an ominous ring of golden scorpions, as well as a giant version of a scorpion.
Wow. When you said Scorpion Ball, I did not go to a gala. I went to a ball of scorpions. I was like, well, that sounds
Terrifying.
scary.
Terrifying.
I don't like the sound of that. But that took a more, well, I would say wholesome, but it's really not wholesome. It's
Definitely bizarre.
is what
I
it
really
is.
like how much Grace Kelly really leaned into this bit. Apparently she said it was the best party of her life, more so than her wedding.
Wow.
I'm also seeing here that the waiters at the party had to wear 18th century style powder wigs, velvet red suits. They had sequin stars embroidered.
Wild.
They carried silver candelabras with red candles. just a lot of work for your own 40th birthday, but maybe inspiring me come my 40th birthday to have a little bit of a Leo party too. Leo ball, only Leos invited.
I'll be there.
Or spouses, partners of Leos, and everything will be lion themed all the way through, and we'll rent out a hotel and make it happen.
Wow,
wonderful.
Great.
Well, thank you for listening to my choice. Again, it did veer into the astrology a little bit, but the commitment to the Scorpion zodiac sign seemed like it was part of it too. So how about you? What was your favorite occurrence of Scorpio or Scorpius in pop culture?
So I cheated.
Well then.
I decided, there wasn't a lot to choose from with Scorpius. We didn't mention that off the top. I feel like we say that a lot, but I expected more for Scorpius just because it's a really good name. Like it's a very, it's got a good sound. So I have a real choice, but then also a cheating choice. So I'm going to start with the cheating choice, and then I'll tell you what the other one I found. So Scorpius, the constellation, as we mentioned, is also known as Maui's
Oh, it
fish.
is.
And I am quite fond of Maui's fishhook appearance in the hit Disney film
One
Moana.
of my top 3 Disney films. Great choice. Tell us more.
Especially when discussed in the song Shiny. What a terrible performance. Get the hook. You don't swing it like you used to. Bad. And that's my favorite appearance of Scorpius as Maui's fishhook.
I don't think that's cheating at all. I think that's a great way of expanding our pop culture to incorporate different mythos.
Yeah. I did also find a board game called Scorpius Freighter, and it sounds sort of like Star Warsy. It's set in the Scorpius system. I don't know A or B. I don't know if it's Beta 1 or Beta 2 Scorpii, but it sort of sounds like you're a rebellion and you have to sort of help get resources to fighters. So that kind of looked interesting too. But Maui's fishhook in Moana was my top choice.
All right, Kit. I think we both came up with some pretty good favorite pop culture appearances of Scorpius. Now let's get to our least favorite.
Well, I think that I have to preface this by saying it's not spelled the same as, is yours spelled the same as the constellation?
No.
I think we probably have the same one. Yeah. So we obviously have no choice but to choose Scorpius Rex, the season 3 antagonist of the hit show Camp Cretaceous. This dinosaur, and listen, we are usually pro-dinosaur, right? I can't think of a better way to describe us, but this dinosaur, I don't know what it was. The front arms look like human arms, and the face I hate it. I just hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
It's an abomination. And we've been talking about it for years now. So this is kind of like trying not to discuss what our favorite and least favorite are, behind the scenes here. So it'll be a surprise to us. But this time, it kind of was like, we've both known about Scorpius Rex. It's been an ongoing joke of how abominable this creature is. And I don't think there was any chance I was going to like something less than that, no matter where I looked. So yeah, of course, this is a creature that exists in the Jurassic World franchise. It has a very snub-nosed, jagged, uneven teeth. The quote in the Wikipedia is that its mind has turned out to be as fragmented and unpredictable as its body. Yeah, and it's just also described here as heavily deformed and grotesque. Like Kit said, it's not spelled the same, but if you do type in Scorpius Rex with an O instead of a U in Scorpius, you can take a look for yourself at this rather horrifying beast.
Horrifying. So yeah, that's definitely my least favorite. I found some other stuff. There's a particle accelerator called Scorpius that's used for nuclear weapon development / testing. There's a villain called Vladimir Scorpius in a James Bond novel of the same name, Scorpius, who just seems like evil to be evil. But really, like you said, We watched Camp Cretaceous together for the most part. And yeah, Scorpius Rex just a tough hang. I think that's just what it is, you know. And I think we just have to all move forward and use the Scorpius brand for something better.
Speaking of which, Kit, can we get to our last segment here? What Scorpius brand do you wish existed?
So I, again, just kind of kept this simple. I think it would be great if there was like a Scorpius stun gun.
Mmm.
And it's like shaped, it's tiny, and it's
Mm-hmm.
shaped like a scorpion. The tail's obviously the like stingy part. It's not deadly in any way, but sort of like, gonna just persuade people to let you alone.
Yeah, it's good for personal safety, somewhere between pepper spray and a taser.
Yeah, exactly. How about you? What are you wishing for the Scorpius brand to do next?
Well, when I was thinking about the Scorpius brand, I went back to our creature corner, and I remembered that great new word I learned, xerophily, which means tolerance for dry environments. And I was thinking, perhaps a Scorpius branded sunscreen might be where it's at for people with very sensitive skin. So if you burn easily, you put some of this Scorpius sunscreen on, and it's almost as if you have the protection of the Scorpius against the burning sun. And it's like you'll be
Ooh, I like
able
that.
to survive these dry and hostile environments. So that's the
Ooh, I
Scorpius
like that.
brand that I wish existed. So we got
Ooh,
stun
well,
guns,
I love an
we got
alliteration.
sunscreens.
These sound great. It's only a matter of time before one of these wishes comes true.
Thank you for joining us today as we learned all about the constellation Scorpio. Next month on Starry Time, we'll learn about Sagittarius, the archer of the night sky,
This has been Kit,
and Jordan.
sisters, lovers of stars and stories.
And we'll see you next time.
On Starry Time.